We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education will tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, I mean,
I have no recognition countries. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single country. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of our 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America.
Through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest. Which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic force. But not only did they give the land, they built land grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. This is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Reparationist Perspective, bringing you those ADOTs, hot topics, and making the case for reparations. Making the case for weaponizing our vote, socializing our suffering. And today, family, we're going to talk about the brand new series, Our Kind of People, which isn't really our kind of people, family. Yes, let's get into it. I'm going to give you an overview of the series. I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts. I just need to share with you the facts about where we really stand, during this pandemic. 90% of us anyway, and of the top 10% of us, we need to talk about who that's really comprised of. Because sadly, It's not American descendants of U.S. chattel slavery predominantly. Okay? So we're going to get into it and talk about the show. Not the show, just giving you an overview of what the show is about in the event you haven't seen it yet. We're going to talk about the history over in Martha's Vineyard and what's really going on with black folks over in the vineyard, over in Oaks Bluff, how it all came to be. And we're going to talk about the TR Roof. What's up? Bam, I see you. Shanna Kim in the building. Thank you so much for joining the line. Yes, we're going to tell the TR Roof up in here. And we're going to talk about why these kinds of series and the decadent veil is problematic for those of us in this fight for reparations. So please, before I get going, a little housekeeping. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. I'm being shadow banned, and we need this to go viral. We need all hands on deck. I was speaking with one of my staunchest comrades in Arkansas, and she needs all hands on deck in Arkansas to help with the reparations fights. You see, we've got to reach critical mass. We don't get these reparations until a collective of us, and it doesn't even have to be more than 10% of us that are pushing hard and leaning in for reparations for it to come to pass. But this is why I show up faithfully. This is my contribution to growing the movement all over the country. So please, I need you to do me a solid. If you're in or around Arkansas and you want to get into this fight, or if you'd like to get testimony at the upcoming California Reparations Task Force meetings on the 12th and the 13th, please Gmail me at thereperspect@gmail.com. Thereperspect@gmail.com. We need all hands on deck. All the grassroots working together all throughout the country. We need everybody coming together to make this happen. You see, we got emancipated because there was a collective consciousness that leaned in to our emancipation. It doesn't happen by osmosis, family. It happens when we lean in. That's how Bruce's Beach happened. That didn't happen overnight. Bruce's Beach was given back to the descendants, and now they are gone from zero to heroes and sheroes in just a stroke of a pen. But that doesn't happen unless we all get involved. We want what happened for the Bruces and what's about to happen for Mr. Willis in Cleveland to happen to all of us. But it's going to take for us to get politically engaged and show up for these types of honest exchanges. Okay? The decadent veil is really doing a number. I'm not going to jump all the way ahead to the end of my show. Let's dig in order. So let's talk about this beautiful show. Okay? Fox's Our Kind of People. This is a review from the Wrap. And I'm going to talk about the review, and then that gives you an overview of the show and some of its shortcomings. I'm going to talk about Martha's Vineyard today, and I'm going to talk about the way I see it in between that, and then I'll let you guys get on with your evening. So, Our Kind of People review, Yaya DaCosta takes on old money black snobs. Woo-wee. And family, I'll be commenting in between here. It is the black niggerati that's really getting in the way of our getting the reparations we are owed in the trillions over multi-generations. You see, they are paid to be the gatekeepers of white supremacy and make sure the overwhelming 90% of us don't get to live as comfortably as they do. And it's tragic to learn that in this fight. It's tragic when you're sitting at a task force meeting discussing reparations signed off by the very white Gavin Newsom, and you get the very black professor, Ray Brooks, whatever the man's name was, reiterate some of the white racist tropes like I'm against cash repair because all you'll do is go out and buy Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, like I said in my comments the next day when I read him a new one at the top of the hour, remember if you want to comment on the upcoming 12th and 13th, I can send you the link on how to do that. Otherwise, I'll be streaming all day on the 12th and the 13th, the task force meetings, so you can weigh in. At least in my chat, they're treating us like children in that chat, in the Blue Jeans app. They won't let us comment. Okay, we're getting mixed stories about why not. Some say it's never supposed to be on. Others say there were offensive comments. Anywho, I digress. So you'll be able to comment if you want to. Gmail me at thereprospect@gmail.com. But I told him, I addressed what he said. And this is what I've got to say to all of you concerned about how we as the descendants intend to spend our reparations. In the words of Jesus, what's that to you? Some may go out and buy several bazillion dollars worth of buckets of chicken. But I'm here to tell you, all the Kentucky Fried Chicken in the world, all the spending on wigs and nails and 40 ounces and Jordans doesn't close an over $100 trillion egregious racial wealth gap. For those of you who believe the white racist tropes that we don't know how to manage our money. We have nothing. And we're the group that saves the most from nothing. Okay? And it is highly offensive to see our people talking like these white supremacist racist glacier donkeys who need every excuse in the book not to run us our dough as they continue to spend our reparations on themselves and on immigrants and on the pandemic. Yes, I said pandemic, and I mean what I said. Anytime you spend $50 million on gain of function research, and then you look to do vaccine mandates because you're looking for a 1,000,000% return on that $50 million investment, and you thought that we would go willingly to a big pharma-funded FDA jab approved in 9 months, that's called a pandemic, family. Let's keep it a buck, okay? So anywho, I said it ain't none of your business what black folks, descendants of U.S. chattel slavery, decide to spend their reparations in the trillions over multi-generations on. So I don't care if you burn your portion. It's not my monkey nor my circus. And like I said in those comments, you can't have it both ways. You can't continue to stress to us to pull ourselves up by our bootless straps and then claim we don't have enough financial literacy to not go out here and blow our reparations on Kentucky Fried Chicken. So when I tell you about this niggerati, this is the decadent veil. These are our black white supremacists, our black white oppressors. And I know that hurts your feelings. Because nobody wants to believe that their own people have been selling them out forever, since slavery. Okay. So back to the text. Karen Gist and Lee Daniels' new series packs in a lot of soapy plots, but misses an opportunity to really explore class issues. Agreed. Agreed. It's been 3 years since Scandal, when the allure of live tweeting series on a weekly basis was at its peak for Black Twitter. Since then, many other soapy watch after you put the kids to sleep dramas like Netflix, Firefly Lane, and Sex Life have popped up on streaming platforms threatening to dismantle the online group viewing experience in favor of binge watching. But Fox's new melodrama, Our Kind of People, from Karen Gist and Lee Daniels, seems to be trying very hard to rekindle appointment TV for Black audiences with a saga about class wars in the uppity Martha's Vineyard town of Oak Bluffs, which is 3% of us. Let's keep it a buck. The population in Oak Bluffs is 3% Black. Moving on. And it's not especially worth the effort. In fact, after the first episode, you might consider jumping ship altogether. That's because the premiere sets up a familiar template that you could probably predict through the end. It's a shame because the show boasts wonderful talent like Debbie Morgan, Joe Morton, and Morris Chestnut, who is mostly phoning in his performance in the first 2 episodes made available to press. Even he seems bewildered by the paint-by-numbers plot. Our Kind of People begins with a family in mourning over the death of Evelyn Vaughn, a single mother and Black natural hair entrepreneur who instilled a sense of pride in her daughter, Angela. I love her name. The underrated Yaya DaCosta plays the role of Angela, and she is drop dead gorgeous. Angela, along with her own daughter, Nikki Elena Bright, and Aunt Patricia, a.k.a. Piggy Morgan, that's Debbie Morgan's character, arrive in Oak Bluffs from Boston with plans to settle into the house that was left behind in Evelyn's name and transform it into a Black hair mecca. Now, let me comment on that while it's off the top of my dome. Even that is surreal because we all know who owns Black hair care in this country. We've got a couple of outliers, right? But the Asians run Black hair care in this country with 3 Ks. I literally have to drive a few miles from my home, and I do it intentionally to shop at the one and only Black hair care in my zip code. There may be others in my zip code, but that's the one I know about. And I go there and I visit, and they usually don't have nearly the supplies. As a matter of fact, I usually have to go to both. I go there first and get all of what I can done there. I go online, and I go, if I'm desperate, I'll go to the Asians. But only as a last resort because I've got to do something different with my hair right now. But we don't run the very thing that makes them wealthy. And then Joe Biden gives them protections. And I want to say 300-something odd billion dollars. It was insane the amount of our reparations he gave to them. Okay. AAPI, I think it's called. Yeah. American, Asian, Pacific Islanders got over 300 billion. While whether we get family all together now, we got Juneteenth, which we've already been celebrating forever, and we got a hip hop holiday. After 87% of our electorate delivered Jim Crow Joe and Kabami to the White House over listening to the reparationist movement, which suggested that you vote Democratic down ballot anybody at the top of the ticket. I don't blame you for not wanting to vote red, but to deliver a trifecta of either party is the ADOC's death knell. Okay? It's choosing between the guillotine and what? Somebody smothering you with a bunch of pillows. It both means the peril of ADOCs. It both means genocide for the ADOCs, both sides of the aisle. Okay. It both means becoming as extinct as the Indians. If we don't start playing chess with the vote over these trifecta vote blue no matter who checkers to our own demise since FDR. Back to the text. Gist, Daniels and the rest of the writing team make a pointed attempt to contrast the old school, old money setting with the experience of Angela, a social media savvy young Black woman from East Side Boston. No, I was born and raised in Boston proper, and I've never heard of such a place, and neither has my mother, despite DaCosta's Angela proudly stating this as if it has the same connotation as, say, Southside Chicago. And there's really no need to create fictional Black neighborhoods in Boston when such areas already exist there. This is a minor but pesky detail that undermines the class conflict at the center of the plot. It's not minor. It's not pesky. It's designed to keep you sheepwalking to the polls as if you've made it. It's designed to make you stay asleep. That's what these kinds of Telemundo vision, tell-lie vision is supposed to do. Manipulate you into believing you are Oak Bluffs when you ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, and you are amongst the majority of our people who are one paycheck from being homeless. That's why I show up. Okay? And he's right. There's no need to create fictional Black neighborhoods in Boston because we are as oppressed in Boston as we are on the south side of Chicago, as we are in Los Angeles, as we are in the dirty South. I think my last report, and you can check this, I can't recall exactly. I do believe we were 700 liquid to Caribbean immigrants, 11,000 liquid in Boston. The last time I did the Color of Wealth Boston in the from 2000 to around 2004 to 2014. It's in the archives, so don't quote me, but it's really egregious. It's really egregious how much better all of these Black immigrant groups are doing as compared to the American descendant of U.S. chattel slavery. And this is why I continue to stress that we must disaggregate these numbers so that the world can see the government's failure and its sole intent to make us the permanent anchor of this country with 3 Ks, capitalism with 3 Ks. On both sides of the aisle. Now, folks always want to come for me because I don't ride the Republicans. I don't vote Republican. I ride who I give my vote for. And politicians respond to pressure, not applause. If we stop giving them that top of that ticket and give a blue Congress to protect the over 50% of ADOCs who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism, I'll bet you they'll run you some tangibles. That's the only way this happens. But if you continue to waste your vote to unseat an overt racist like Trump, to put a covert racist like the Strom Thurmond supporting Jim Crow sloppy creepy Joe, then you are signing up for the peril of our people. So no, you don't have to make this up. I think the liquidity in Boston for ADOCs is $11, $8 or $11. I think it's 8 in Boston and 11 in Miami. It's atrocious. But these type of films, these telenovelas, mundas, whatever they call, television, is designed to keep you asleep. Designed to keep you tied to the fiction so you don't continue to pull yourself up by your bootless straps. As our numbers are shrinking through government-sanctioned state executions and black-on-black crimes and murder, which we don't even know if it's really us in Chicago killing us because they've only resolved 13% of the murders in Chicago. And black SUVs with tinted windows and no plates with white folks driving and shooting out their SUVs have been spotted. Right? Back to the text. From there, you can more or less see where the narrative will eventually go. Though the second episode tries to throw in some twists that still wind up being predictable. Our Kind of People is most interesting as an exploration of how the American dream can differ for Black families, a topic too often explored one-dimensionally, if at all. It's a dynamic that may be better explored in Lawrence Otis Graham's book, Our Kind of People, Inside America's Black Upper Class, which inspired the series. But in the show's early episodes, both Angela and her family, as well as Leah and hers, look to secure legacy in a space that has historically granted Black people opulence, an important record that isn't so much as footnoted. The series attempts to explore how Oak Bluffs, once a land of wealth opportunities for all Black people, became one exclusively for Black people who've managed to stay there throughout generations, and not Black folks trying to carve new opportunities for themselves today. We're going to get into some of that data in the next article. Because we, at a median national income of $30,000 and a median home price of $379,380 to round it up, can't even afford to vacation in Martha's Vineyard, much less live there. As interesting as that is, Gist and Daniels more often rely on low-hanging fruit storylines, from secret interclass family members to teenage attempted murder plots to drug busts. While that might appeal to some audiences, the show misses a huge opportunity to examine class structure, including how that seeps into Black hair politics that are glossed over here, Oak Bluff's history, and the dream of getting that proverbial slice of American pie. Quote, Our Kind of People so far also spends far too much time having Angela and Leah one-up each other without really humanizing either of them. Perhaps future episodes will unpack some of the more fascinating underlying themes, but the first two episodes are really not a great sign, especially not when audiences have a myriad small screen fare to choose from that both compels and entertains them right away. Welcome to the live. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Okay, I'm going to share this picture while I go into the next story. Hold on, stand by. Oh, let me see here. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for joining the live. You guys can chat amongst yourselves. I'll be right over. Let me share. And as usual, I'll be sharing how I see it. Make sure you can see this. Okay, now you can see me. So this is the real story of the Black Martha Vineyard. Let's get into it. Elizabeth Gates, this is Henry Louis Gates' niece, I think, was 12 the first time she snuck out of her family's summer house. Is this the one I want to read? Hold on, family. I don't know if this is the one. I think I like the picture, but I wanted a different narrative. Oh, no, this is the one. So I'll be commenting in between, and then I'll come over and bid you guys farewell for the evening. Elizabeth Gates was 12 the first time she snuck out of her family's summer house. From the balcony of their white antebellum home, Gates could hear Biggie rap lyrics pulsing through her window, and she quietly made her way down to the beach where a mass of people were dancing in the thick, steamy air. That was how so many summers played out until Gates turned 16, when she no longer had a curfew and could finally stay out all night reveling in the beach parties and bonfires that drew heavy crowds to Oak Bluffs, a quaint town on the northeastern shore of Martha's Vineyard, a 96 square mile island shaped like a shark's tooth off the coast of Massachusetts. Quote, it was this hub of relaxation and a marker for all my rites of passage, says Gates, a writer and the daughter of public intellectual. She's a daughter, actually, and African-American scholar Henry Louis Gates Jr. In the past, Oak Bluffs has been hailed as a summer playground for the elite, but that neat summary doesn't tell the full story. As interviews with close to a dozen summertime vacationers and longtime residents recently showed. As in any place with a treasured history, powerful personalities, breathtaking vistas, and scarce acreage, there is tension between longtime residents and newcomers, between year-rounders and those who summer, between old and new. And always there is the fear that as this cherished community continues to evolve, it will lose the very things that make it so special. So, me speaking, in some of the data I researched, the median age of the small, tiny percent of Blacks in Martha Vineyard is 40. Moving on. That's a problem, family. There's no youth. There's no youth. You can't grow. Okay, moving on. Oak Bluffs became a tourist destination. Let me see if I want to show you a different picture. Hold on, family. Let me show you some more pictures as I'm talking. Although I really love that shot. But let's go down and change it up a little bit. Okay. Oak Bluffs became a tourist destination out of necessity. Named for its scenic perch in an oak grove overlooking the Nantucket Sound in the Atlantic Ocean, it was a haven for African Americans during the mid-20th century, when Jim Crow laws and segregation meant that Black vacationers were often turned away from mainstream beaches and hotels. Oak Bluffs was the only town of the now 6 on Martha's Vineyard where African Americans were permitted to find lodging. Initially, freed slaves sought shelter there after slavery was abolished in the mid-19th century. Many worked in the fishing and whaling industry. Then in the 1930s and 40s, as African Americans in urban centers like New York, Washington, D.C., and Boston began to take up jobs in professional industries and establish themselves as part of the middle and upper middle class, they flocked to the East Coast shoreline in the summer to take in the beach and the bonfires. Today, Oak Bluffs, which sits on 7.4 square miles of land, maintains the charm of a fishing village with its colorful gingerbread cottages, pristine beaches, bustling marina, and old-time seafood joints. Despite being an important historical haven for African Americans, Oak Bluff is not a majority Black town. The Martha's Vineyard Commission reports that just 3.3% of Oak Bluff's full-time residents are Black. But Oak Bluff's popularity as a summertime destination, particularly with African American vacationers, means that the town's population swells from 4,647 to 20,000 in a matter of weeks, a trend that year-round residents have coined Black August, and which drew hordes of news reporters to the island during the Obama's annual pilgrimages. Pilgrimages, yes. African American identity is ingrained in the community with luminaries such as Maya Angelou, Martin Luther King Jr., and Harry Belafonte having vacation there. One of the Oak Bluff's most popular hangouts, Inkwell Beach, pays homage to this history. Its name, a reference to beachgoers' black skin, which was said to glisten like ink in the hot sun. The name is also a nod to the town's rich literary history. Residents and vacationers gather at Inkwell to watch fireworks on the 4th of July, spend the day digging for clams, and light up the shore with festive bonfires at night. Every morning, the Inkwell Polar Bears, a local swimming club, splash into the cold Atlantic waters just after sunrise, soaking up the earliest rays of summer. Let me show you another visual. Welcome to the live. Please like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Let me make sure you can see that. Okay. Abigail McGrath's family has been summering in Oak Bluffs for 6 generations. Quote, no specific things happen here, she says. You do the same thing over and over again. You always watch the fireworks and you always go clam fishing. McGrath descends from a line of notable literary elite who first arrived on the vineyard in the 1930s. Her mother, Helena Johnson, was a Harlem Renaissance poet who socialized with the likes of author Zora Neale Hurston and celebrated African-American poet Langston Hughes in 1920s New York. Let me show you a picture of her. Back to the text. McGrath's aunt, author Dorothy West, also owned a home in Oak Bluffs where she became acquainted with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, who worked as an editor at Doubleday after her years in the White House. That was new information to me, family. McGrath remembers peeking from behind the curtain and being awed at the sight of Jackie O, walking across her auntie's front yard. Onassis edited West's final novel, The Wedding, published in 1995 and set in 1950s Oak Bluffs, 3 years before West died. McGrath has since inherited her mother's Georgian-style Oak Bluffs cottage, where she houses a writer's residency in honor of her mother and aunt. That's what you see right next to her. Very modest, but beautiful. I mean, I can't see the full scope of it. It might be more than it appears in the picture. Quote, people have an impression of how Oak Bluff is in July and August, but not a consciousness of a small town in which you know all your neighbors and where you read a book at night instead of watching TV, says McGrath, who is in her late 70s and splits time between her homes in New York and Martha's Vineyard. Year-round people just want to go fishing in quiet and do a clam bake and look at the stars. So which party you're invited to doesn't mean as much to people who have been here for generations versus people who just got here. Oak Bluffs is essentially defined by a seasonal surge, and there are only 2 seasons that matter, summertime and the rest of the year. This divide also extends to the occasional friction between year-rounders and summertime vacationers. 22-year-old Avery Hazel, a college senior who grew up full-time in Oak Bluff, says summer people are often immune to the tension. Quote, some people in Oak Bluffs hold resentment toward the summertime vacationers because they don't understand that this is where we live, says Hazel. We're not hanging out and going to the beach. We work. This is our home. Sometimes there's this sense that the summertime vacationers are taking over. Gates recalls a scene from last summer when acclaimed filmmaker Spike Lee threw a party at his home. Gates, who was at the party, used to work for Lee and babysat his kids growing up. Droves of uninvited people crashed the soiree, and it became this weird, I need to be with Spike Lee vibe, says Gates. According to McGrath, let me show this next picture. Make sure you can see it in frame. Yeah, that's pretty good. Back to the text. According to McGrath, the fancy black people who come down here for the summer are the same as the fancy white people who come down here for the summer. They're not residents. They simply summer here because it's fun. But Gates, who admits her opinions are unpopular with some other residents, sees a more complicated transition in progress. It's not a safe place for a lot of the black community, she says. The community is angling itself toward ostracizing people from different classes. And there's no greater weapon than internalized class division, which is what makes our kind of people problematic for me. Ironically, Gates appears nostalgic for a simpler Oak Bluffs that influential families like hers might have involuntarily helped to leave behind, as their connection to the town attracted others of similar means and social standing. Still, it's heartbreaking, she says, of the change she sees. In the 90s, it was cross-class, and I was in love with Martha's Vineyard. Filmmaker Stanley Nelson, whose list of film subjects reads like a who's who of Black history: Miles Davis, Marcus Garvey, Emmett Till, Madam C.J. Walker, the Black Panthers, historically Black colleges and universities, chose Oak Bluffs as the focus of his 2004 documentary, A Place of Our Own. Nelson says that Oak Bluffs still plays an important role in providing a reprieve from the racism Black people face on a constant basis. Racism and prejudice still exist in this country, sometimes more so for successful people who have to be ensconced in all-white environments at work, he says. Oak Bluffs gives you a chance to let your guard down. Nelson, who was in his mid-60s, grew up summering in Oak Bluffs and still visits for several weeks each year. There's a sense that this is a place where Black people belong, a place where Black people have a foothold, he says. People don't look at you like, what are you doing here? Because Black people have a place here. Oak Bluff's profile has risen with splashy annual events that draw A-list crowds. The Martha Vineyard African American Film Fest, coming up on its 17th summer, has featured appearances by cultural icons like Spike Lee and Barry Jenkins, the director and co-writer of the Oscar-winning Moonlight. And locals whisper about the annual White Party, an ornate garden party that doubles as a charity event, like it's the holy grail of summer's social calendar. Not only has this contributed to some of the keeping up with the Joneses attitude that Gates describes, but it's also resulted in a summertime population surge that presents a challenge for business owners. Our Christmas time is August, says Roger Schilling, 55, who owns C'est La Vie gift shop on Circuit Avenue, Oak Bluffs Main Strip. Now, I want to show you this picture, family, because I need you to tell me if he looks like an immigrant or if he looks ADOX. Because he is making a fortune. What does that look like to you? An immigrant success? Or does that look like ADOX success in Oak Bluffs? Our Christmas time is August, says Roger Schilling, 55, who owns C'est La Vie gift shop on Circuit Avenue, Oak Bluffs Main Strip. That's it. We either make our money in August or we don't. Still, Schilling, who moved to Oak Bluffs from France in the 80s with just $1,000 to his name, has only positive feelings about his decision. In France, if you don't come for money, you can't have money, he says. I came at the right time, the right place, and I've been very, very blessed. Another problem I have with immigration being weaponized against Black American descendants of U.S. chattel slavery. He can come from friends with $1,000 and do very, very well and be very, very blessed in the not so black Oak Bluffs that our kind of people boast about our excellence. You see the lies inherent in the tell lie vision, and why you must look at these things for entertainment only and get back to work instead of falling asleep like Mr. Schilling is us. And he clearly is not. And I'm sure if he was one of us, they would have featured him here. We are the workers of what Mr. Schilling owns. Quote, we share the same love on the vineyard. Schilling adds, the day I came here, I felt it. I'm living a life here I never thought I would. The sky's the limit, the beauty of America. That's not ADOX in Oaks Bluff. But with home prices inching over the $500,000 mark, Oak Bluff has become inaccessible to many of the young people who used to be a mainstay on the vineyard. I'm not concerned about young people. I'm concerned about the Black American descendants of U.S. chattel slavery being able to afford to live anywhere in the world they damn well please. Given that white folks and immigrants eat from the egregious $100 trillion racial wealth gap, while 90% of ADOX share less than $700 billion since COVID. While folks sit up here like Professor Roy Brooks and says his concern with giving us cash is that we'll run out here and spend it on Kentucky Fried Chicken. He's the type of niggerati that could afford to live in Oaks Bluff, and he got the gall to be teaching at the university level with this kind of mindset in our reparations task force meetings. He wants to give more programs, like affirmative action that was supposed to benefit ADOX, which ultimately benefits white women, immigrants, and LGBTQIA, while we get nothing. And if we get anything, we're the most underpaid and second in education to the white folks. The Martha's Vineyard Planning Commission reports a median home price of $535,000 in Oak Bluffs, up from $135,000 in 1990. Rent today averages between $1,600 a week for a summertime cottage and $11,500 a week for a luxury rental. Who do you know at $30,000 median national income can afford to be in Martha's Vineyard and luxuriate when 1 week is $1,600? I'll wait, put it in the chat. Danielle Hopkins, 19, who grew up full-time in Oak Bluffs and is now a sophomore at Barnard College, says the community could do more to increase job opportunities and affordable housing for young people. Why? It's only 3.3% of you there. They don't care. Let me show you her. Let me show you her. Hold on. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. I think that's her. She looks much younger, but let's just go with it for now. You have to own a house to be able to live here, Hopkins says. There's not very many apartment complexes. It's very expensive. So you have to have a stable, wealthy job in order to live here. For Hopkins and teenagers like her who spend all year on the isolated island that is the vineyard, life revolves around high school. Hopkins played field hockey, ran track, and campaigned for student council when she wasn't writing stories for the high school newspaper. Quote, I did so much because I didn't have anything else to do. I figured I might as well try things, she says. In the off-season, when job prospects were scarce, Hopkins babysat, and like most teenagers on the vineyard, she balanced multiple summer jobs at restaurants. She says she feels lucky to have grown up in a community that celebrates African American intellectuals, where society at large often doesn't champion Black people's accomplishments. Busy waiting tables, however, the elite vacationers were often just out of Hopkins' reach. Quote, I think it would be cool to hang out with the people who vacation here, but because I have to work, I never get to, she says. Sometimes I do feel a little removed, especially now that I'm in college. I feel connected to Oak Bluffs and Martha's Vineyard, but I don't feel like it's a place where I belong. How many other Black young people feel the same way, if they're fortunate enough to still be in Oak Bluffs? 55 years ago, let me show this next slide. Hi, Erie Blackfire. Welcome to the live, my love. 55 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64, which marked the official end of racial segregation, other residents are grappling with a similar question, reflecting on the role that such a haven for African Americans should play in today's society. Despite the changes, culture clashes, and ambivalence about the community's future, Oak Bluff still serves its purpose. It's a refuge, year-round for some and seasonal for others, where Black people don't have to question their ability to congregate with one another, their drive, or their capacity to succeed due to the color of their skin. Bates points to the time her father was arrested at the Cambridge, Massachusetts house in the summer of 2009 as a result of what many believe to have been racial profiling. He had returned home after a business trip to find his door jammed, and a neighbor reported his attempted entry as a break-in. When we were in Oak Bluffs, it represented a safety net, Gates says, of the support the family received on the vineyard at the time. We had this Black community that was so evidently vocal on our side because of how racially polarized we are now in America under Trump. People really feel worthless. So there's this mentality of, at least I can afford to go to Martha's Vineyard. And it becomes this mark of honor. Black people want to feel worthy, Gates asks. We want to feel like we belong. Well, what's problematic in what she is saying is that she is clearly detached from the truth of how the majority of us are faring. The people she's speaking of is very, very small in number. And this is what I find problematic about our kind of people. Okay, let me go back to this photo while I finish this segment out. This is what I find problematic about it. It's not dealing with the truth. And it's keeping our people sheep walking to the polls. You know, I like the Cosbys. I like these kind of aspirational kind of television. But it simply was a lie as well. The majority of us weren't living in neighborhoods like the Huxtables. Okay? We weren't living in places like the Huxtables. To this day, that's not the majority of ADOCs. And for me, it just simply means that we continue to lie to ourselves, and it makes it so much harder for us to grow the reparationist movement when we need, you know, critical mass to really make a dent in the politics that are oppressing ADOCs nationwide. We will perish without those reparations. We need all hands on deck. This is not a joke. The roof is not only on fire, so are we. And we're not dying from COVID, we're dying from medical bias. In the very beginning, they didn't have enough COVID tests, so they weren't giving us tests, they were sending us home. Then when they were hospitalizing us, because we don't have health insurance, they were intubating the majority of us, not giving us the $5,000 per shot remdesivir. So this will all come out in the wash later, akin to HIV and the Holocaust on our people that was. So I want you to understand that shows like Our Kind of People are just to be looked at, for entertainment value only. Don't allow it to lure you and the people around you back to sleep. Ain't nothing going on in Oaks Bluff but a bunch of wealthy white folks and wealthy white immigrants. Like Mr. Sheeling, who owns a very successful store on the main strip. He makes that money. He feels very blessed. He knew that when he came here as a white Frenchman, that they would give him what he needed to afford property on the strip, where he could make his money annually and gets to luxuriate the rest of the year. That is not ADOC's life. We are fighting for our very survival. We are fighting not to become the permanent underclass in the country with 3 Ks that our ancestors built with their lives. So shows like The Cosbys and Our Kind of People and Scandal, that's not our reality. It is social engineering of exponential proportion. And we need not buy into it. Watch it if you want to be entertained. It's beautiful to look at. Yaya is absolutely gorgeous. I love the natural hair thing going. But like I said earlier, we don't own nor run black hair care. And that is by design of institutional systemic racism. They're not lending to us like they do the Asians, like they'll do the Afghan refugees who are coming over in the droves, like they even do black immigrants. Black immigrants' median national income is about $20,000 more than ours. They're at least able to weaponize their accents and where they herald from to beat us out of job opportunities. And when we're hired, we're the first fired and the least paid of all the immigrants and white folks. So this broadcast is designed to keep the pedal to the metal, okay? We have got to continue to go full court press, not give in, not give up, not give out, and wear them the hell out in social media. Reparations, reparations, reparations. That's our square. And with that being said, Felly, that's my time. I want to say our prayer protection, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOCS and its allies are, God truly is, because family, you are the face of God. Yes, you are. The voice of God in the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until tomorrow, family, you make it a beautiful God-inspired rest of your evening. Know that I love you black. I love you strong. Peace. Stay tuned for the outro. Here we go.